Dear honorable guests, please be seated. Our conference is about to start. Thank you. Welcome to the first Ocean Park International STEAM Education Conference 2019. I am Salome from Ocean Park, and I'm very honored to be your MC today. And we are proud to present the Asia's first international conference focusing on STEAM education knowledge sharing in a live edutainment setting. And we aspire to provide an international research and collaboration platform for educators all around the world. And it is my pleasure today to welcome the chairman of Ocean Park, Mr. Leo Kung, GPSJP, to kickstart the conference by delivering a welcoming speech. Mr. Kung, please.
Hello. Mr. Secretary Edward Yao, Professor Andy Hall, Mr. Jimmy Lee, and Mr. M.K. Chang, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my honor to welcome you all to the first Ocean Park International STEAM Education Conference. With a vision to be the world's best theme park resort, focusing on education, conservation, and entertainment, Ocean Park is committed to provide edutainment experience through the thrill of discovery while connecting people with nature. Over the past 25 years, over 1 million students from kindergarten to university levels have participated in Ocean Park's educational programs. In recent years, we observe the education landscape is changing. Awareness towards STEAM education and the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Goals are increasing, and they are embraced by overseas and local educators. We also believe, like that STEAM education and UN Sustainable Goals are important as the driving force for our economy. At the same time, play a key role in addressing our society's and environment's needs. In this respect, I am happy to say that Ocean Park is dedicated to share the resources and expertise to facilitate the development of STEAM education in the region. By creating a STEAM practice community for educational professionals worldwide. Thus, we organize Asia's first international conference focused on STEAM education knowledge sharing in a live edutainment setting. And we hope to provide through this conference an international research and collaboration platform for educators from Hong Kong and all over the world. Here in Ocean Park, we offer educators a unique opportunity to captivate their students' imagination and engaging fashion using our facilities, rides, attractions, animals, conservation resources, and this diversified environments to illustrate and explore the principles of STEAM. Our Ocean Park Academy team will further illustrate these activities later on with a video and discuss further with you in parallel sessions. In this two-day conference, we are also very pleased to have over 500 participants each day and a total of 60 speakers who will present their valuable STEAM education-related experiences here in the conference, including the following honorable speakers: Dr. April Joy Erickson, Professor Peter Charles Taylor, Professor Brandon Godley, Mr. Cesar Yong Harada, Professor T.K. Ng, Principal C.H. Chow, and Dr. Ann Kerr. They will share with us their views and experience in STEAM and marine conservation. Together with this conference, we have organized the first Ocean Park International Conservation STEAM competition and a Connecting Students with Nature Through STEAM campaign. 18 teams of students from numerous regions participated in the first Ocean Park International Conservation STEAM competition. They will showcase their innovative solutions to global environmental issues here at the student booths. Thank you, Hong Kong government and our Hong Kong Tourism Commission, whose contribution and support that we highly value. Their generous support has allowed us to have this valuable opportunity to host a STEAM conference that benefits the Asian education community. Without our organizers' support, and we would not have made this happen. Here with some of the key organizations that I would like to thank. The Education Bureau, the University of Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Academy for Gifted Education, Hong Kong Association for Science and Mathematics Education, Agricultural, Fisheries and Conservation Department, Hong Kong Ocean Park Marriott Hotel, Leisure and Cultural Services Department, and Hong Kong Science Museum. Of course, I would also like to thank the steering committee, which is led by Professor Kenneth Leung, and the advisory committee of this STEAM conference for the vision, advice, time, and support to guide and facilitate all these facilities. This conference is only one of our recent attempts to contribute to the global STEAM education. Please continue to support our upcoming STEAM initiatives. To name a few, the STEAM Hub, our collaboration with renowned universities, our enhanced park education programs, as well as the development of STEAM education in the region. I am sure you will have fruitful and rewarding exchanges in this conference. I wish everyone a very enjoyable day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kung, for your enlightening words. Thank you very much. And now it is truly our honor to have Mr. Edward Yao, GPSJP, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development, Government of the Hong Kong SAR, to be one of our officiating guests. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Yao to come on stage. Thank you, Mr. Yao.
Good morning, everybody. Hi. The difference between the chairman and the officiating guest is I don't get the reception of whisker. But a very good morning, and in fact, a very delighted moment to see this conference happening. This is rather unprecedented because I think people wouldn't think about coming to Ocean Park for learning. But actually, Ocean Park offers a lot of learning opportunity in the past. But having a conference on education, on STEAM, in a park, in a fun park, must be quite a synergy and sort of a wow idea to start with. But actually, it's happening. It's happening by idea from Ocean Park, which has all along positioned themselves more than a fun park, but also having a role and responsibility to the society, to young people, and also leveraging on their sort of strength, being the place where they care about marine life, conservation, and taking advantage of the unique sort of strategic location. It is also a collaboration between the government, particularly on tourism, and also on education with the park, because this project is funded by the government through the budget before this year. Government sort of devoting 310 million Hong Kong dollar for Ocean Park to launch something beyond just tourism. And I think it speaks for itself that Hong Kong is a very interesting place, that while we pride ourselves to be a most international metropolitan city, but actually Hong Kong could be a very green city. bring back my old hat as Secretary for Environment some years back, I think Hong Kong actually have a lot of things to be proud of. Being a tiny city, but also with a smaller footprint. During my days, the average carbon footprint for Hong Kong was on par with the global average. So that means there's a lot of things that we can do. I'm sure, well, the target we set for now is even more aggressive than the years when I was taking that portfolio. That was helped by the very compact city, very efficient use of transportation and also high-rise building. Therefore, our efficiency in terms of energy consumption very condensed. Also helped by sort of the efforts, in particular in pushing more recycling. But in recycling, it's often people sitting around here, the young people who drive their parents. But one thing often omitted, or people who might easily forgotten about Hong Kong's landscape, is in fact the majority of our territory falling within a more urban setting than falling within a more rural setting than an urban setting. In terms of area, I think the urban part of Hong Kong contribute at most a quarter of our total territory, 25%. But actually, counting Country Park alone, the statutory protected area account for 42 or 43%, which is a very exceptional case around the world in major sort of metropolitan city where we still maintain a very major part of our territory being green. Not to mention that, well, in fact, in addition to welcoming over sort of 50 million sort of visitors a year, in fact, another type of visitors coming to Hong Kong outnumber the people's tourists. In fact, they're the migrant birds. They came in millions every year, sort of from Siberia all the way Japan, Korea, down to Hong Kong, stopping at a Ramsar site and all the way to Southern Hemisphere. So actually, well, in addition to being green, conservation, biodiversity, Hong Kong actually provide a very good case for conservation. And I think that's where Ocean Park is also wanting to position themselves with, because, well, having this location in a headland with a remarkable coastline, and also with the expertise within the park in protecting and advocating sort of conservation of marine life, in animal husbandry, in breeding, and also in this area. I think Ocean Park is well placed to reach out beyond its traditional role as a fun park, but also connecting with younger people, with schools. And I think this is the purpose of this conference, promoting STEAM, which is a modern concept of bringing different subjects together, using what the new world and present-day world require in terms of learning. So I congratulate Ocean Park and also your collaboration with Hong Kong U, with Education Bureau, and also I thank for all the participants coming today in this day-long program attended by so many people, and also sort of finding a new form of collaboration that could also bring a new role for not only Ocean Park, but also Hong Kong. So I believe, well, together with certain sort of new insight and making the best strength that Hong Kong has, I believe, well, we can all work together and also sort of bring a more interesting part of our learning as well as Hong Kong's interesting life. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Yao. Thank you. We are absolutely honored to have the University of Hong Kong as one of our co-organizers. We would like to give our warmest welcome to Professor Hall, Vice President and Pro-Vice-Chancellor Research at the University of Hong Kong. Professor Hall, please.
Hello, good morning. Good morning. Secretary Yao, Chairman Kong, all the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, teachers, students, boys and girls. Your only question, and probably the first question you would ask is, why is Hong Kong U involved in this? I think it's a fair question. It's very easy to answer. If you think about university, I think it's a premier university. The major mission, one, has to be education. Now, I'm looking after research, by the way. When I say education is number one, it means a lot. And number two is research. And number three is impact. Just summarize it in three terms, and you know why we're here. Education. we take on the biggest mission of educating a whole range of the populations from young to fairly senior, and for the world and for Hong Kong. And this is why we believe that it is important for us to be associated with all aspects of education. Now, by the way, I'm sure that there are many experts here. Education is not just about learning in the classrooms and laboratories, because in the classroom, right, there's actually hardly any problems and challenges. And in the real problems, I'm talking about laboratories. No, the real problems and challenges are in the world. If you go to a society, you go to anywhere, you come to Ocean Park, if you like, you see it. There are many challenges to solve. You think a little bit more. So we want our students to really understand what the problems are in the world, including Ocean Park is facing. And I want our students to think of solutions. And this is actually a very good reason why we are here. And number two, research. You know what's research? Research is generating ideas, generating new knowledge, right? But of course you ask me and ask us, what is it for, generating for what? Then it has to be something for translation so that the world can feel the benefit and impact. And this is why impact comes to the last one, which is a very important one, is where research really make an influence to the world's development, including local developments. And this is why in Ocean Park, and you will see very many things. I hope that when you go around Ocean Park, when you take your friends along, and boyfriends, girlfriends, parents, and kids, really think a little bit more, not just seeing an exhibit or taking a ride or looking at an animal, but there's a big, interesting story behind them. And that story is what we really want to know. And if you think carefully about that, where do the exhibits come from? And what about the animals living in life? And this is where the sustainability comes from. And this is why we actually want our students, we have later on, you'll see some presentations, and I'm very thankful to our Hong Kong U students. These are the students. They are just like you. They are undergraduates. They study day and night, weekends, holidays. But when we say that, let's go. Let's go to Ocean Park and do something different. And they ask me, why do I go to Ocean Park? I thought I only go on Sunday. No, you spend 12 days there working on something important. And they come here, and after 2 or 3 days, they look around, they talk to many people, they understand what are the problems, but that's not difficult, The difficult part is, what are the solutions? What are the solutions? The most challenging part is, no, I don't want old solutions. I don't want tested solutions. I want something new, something different, something that nobody has ever thought about, nobody has tried, and I want you to try it. Now, that's challenging, And within 10 days or so, they come up with solutions, and they're very impressive. Now, to me, that is quality, and that is commitment, and that is impact. So thank you very much for Ocean Park, for giving us the chance to experience the world, and I hope that teachers and students think a little bit more that with Ocean Park, we have a very good partner, and we have a very good model for us to work together for the better living for the people and for the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Hall. Thank you very much. Thank you. Ocean Park's on-site animal, nature resources, and attractions offer inspirational education opportunities and partnerships. Please enjoy this short video about the education programs offered in Ocean Park, Hong Kong.
啡色係咪白色？整體嘅顏色係黑白啊嘛，咁我就覺得可能尾巴係黑色。白色。大熊貓有幾多隻手指？3隻手指。5隻。1、2、3、4。係1隻。
Curiosity, the beginning of world exploration. This extraordinary place we call home is full of life. We are in this together. For humans and nature to continue living in harmony and for life to flourish, it must all start from education. Let's start from the Ocean Park Academy, Hong Kong. Over 1 million students have attended programs in the Ocean Park Academy, Hong Kong since its establishment in 1992. Nearly 90% of respondents were extremely satisfied with our education program. Ocean Park Academy, Hong Kong provides 360-degree experiential learning and STEAM elements through in-park, out-park, and overseas eco-walker learning activities. Students are encouraged to use human senses to connect with nature, to be inspired as they explore the world. Take learning about the giant panda as an example. Based on the growth and development needs of the students, our educators will arouse their curiosity in the giant panda. Through close observation in the giant panda habitat, followed by drawing and sketching, students will discover the relationship between animals and their habitats. Our educators will organize group activities and games, leading students on a journey with the giant panda as it matures and faces changes and challenges. Students in secondary school are able to analyze and critique. Our educators will encourage them to adopt a scientific angle, to compare and contrast various animal skulls, investigate the natural and man-made threats that the giant panda has to face, and ultimately contribute to their living habitat. Our educators will also visit schools to host enriched activities. They will lead students in designing animal enrichment such as a toy for their favorite animals. Students can explore all kinds of natural environment across Hong Kong during daytime or in the nighttime to experience the diversity of the city's living creatures. We also organize overseas eco-walker learning activities where students can travel to the panda base in Wolong, Sichuan, venturing into the depths of the restricted conservation area to understand the work of panda caregivers. We believe that knowledge has no boundaries. We will continue to provide the best learning experiences to our students and work together to achieve the 17 sustainable goals. Let us journey side by side to inspire our students to be curious, to explore, and to enjoy the thrill of discovery. Let us nurture a generation that learns and lives with passion.
One of the key elements of STEAM education is to encourage the students to be creative when solving problems. And hence, Ocean Park and the University of Hong Kong have collaborated and organized a 2-week-long hackathon themed edutainment with innovation. After the intense program, we have some very innovative solutions that were pitched to industrial professionals. And now, I would like to invite Mr. Yao and Professor Hall to come up for a prize presentation. The second runner-up for the hackathon goes to Team Animal Go and Team Mesa. Thank you. The first runner-up for the hackathon is Team Cutie. Thank you very much. And the champion goes to Team OP Rescuers. Congratulations. Thank you very much. May I now invite Mr. Yao to remain on stage for the next round of prize presentation, and thank you, Professor Hall. Please remain on stage. Thank you very much. And the first Ocean Park International Conservation STEAM competition has invited students from all around the world to submit their creative proposals on solving different environmental issues. And in fact, we have just finished our finals yesterday. And now, may I please invite Mr. Kern to come up on stage for the next round of prize presentation with Mr. Yao. Thank you. We will firstly present the prizes for STEAM Action Topic. The Creative Award of STEAM Action Topic goes to CNMA Sun K Secondary School. Thank you very much. The first runner-up of the STEAM Action Topic is Packard College. Thank you very much. And the champion goes to Liger Leadership Academy. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Please remain on stage. Please remain on stage. And I would like to invite the judges for the STEAM Action Topic to come up for a group photo. I would like to invite Dr. Erickson and Mr. Falk, and as well as Mr. Lau to come up for the photo. And could I please invite all the awardees to come out for the group photo as well? Thank you very much. Please be seated. Now we have our next round of the topic. We are now presenting the prizes for the STEAM promotion, and the creative prize goes to the St. Catherine's School for Girls. Thank you very much. The first runner-up of the STEAM promotion topic is St. Paul's Convent School. Thank you very much. And the champion goes to Han Academy. Thank you very much. And I would like to invite one of the judges for the topic, Ms. Jan Bowman, to come up on stage for a group photo. And please, for the awardees, please come out for a group photo as well. Thank you very much. And next, we will be presenting prizes for the STEAM public awareness topic. So for the creative prize, we have the Pentecostal Lam Hon Kwong School. Thank you very much. The first runner-up goes to Harrow International School, Hong Kong. Thank you very much. And the champion goes to Caritas Fan Ling, Chan Chin Ha Secondary School. Congratulations. Thank you very much. Can I please invite the judges for this round to come on stage for a group photo? Please welcome Professor Brandon Godley and Professor Pan Wenshi. Thank you. Thank you very much. Congratulations to all winning teams. And thank you, Mr. Kung and Mr. Yao. Please remain on stage for our officiating ceremony. We would like to invite Professor Andy Hall, Mr. Chen Ming Kung, Principal Education Officer, Curriculum Development of Education Bureau, and Mr. Jim Lee, the Council Chairman of Hong Kong Association for Science and Mathematics Education, to come up on stage to join Mr. Yao and Mr. Kung for our officiating ceremony. Right, are you ready? So please hold up the signs, and when I count to 3, please insert the signs. On your mark, 3, 2, 1, go! We would like to apply the concepts of STEAM education in marine and conservation sciences. With the knowledge we learn from STEAM education, we can all make the life in ocean blossom again. And thank you very much for our officiating guests. And now, could you please remain on the stage for our group photo? And here, we would also like to invite the conference co-organizers to come on stage to join the group photos with the officiating guests. May I now invite Dr. Gary Harvard, Associate Dean, Faculty of Education, the University of Hong Kong. Professor Becky Liu, Head of Department of Geography, the University of Hong Kong. And also Professor Kenneth Leung, Professor of School of Biological Sciences, the University of Hong Kong. Please. Thank you very much for our honorable guests. Please be seated. Thank you. So now, let us start with the first keynote seminar. Please welcome our facilitator of this session, Dr. Valerie Yip. Dr. Yip is one of the steering committee members of this conference. She also represents the Faculty of Education, the University of Hong Kong. Dr. Yip, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. How are you? Great. It's nice to meet you right here, and this is also my honor to introduce the very first keynote speaker, Dr. April Arison, aerospace engineer who holds many firsts in this very first keynote seminar. Dr. Arison is distinguished by many firsts in STEAM and STEAM education. She's the first African-American woman to receive a PhD in engineering from Harvard University and at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. She is also the first person of color to receive the Washington Award from the Western Society of Engineers. Dr. Arison holds many awards, such as the Top 18 Women Who Will Change the World, awarded by the Women's Network. Dr. Arison loves to speak to young people and has inspired them by many means, such as providing mentorship herself and creating an email pipeline for underrepresented groups in STEM disciplines. As an outstanding scientist, engineer, and educator, Dr. Arison aims high and always encourages others to live towards the dreams. She shares her findings in America, Canada, Germany, South Africa, Mexico, and now coming to be in Hong Kong. With these great achievements, it's wonderful for us to have the first of many here in the first Ocean Park International STEAM Education Conference to deliver the first keynote seminar on putting the arts in STEAM. Welcome, Dr. Arison.
Well, good morning. First of all, I wanted to tell the coordinators, in particular Andrew, if he's in here. I haven't seen him much today, but we've been chatting and going back and forth for the last 6 months to get me here, and he works very tirelessly. He has a wonderful staff, and you guys have just been great hosts. I really appreciate the invitation. This is my first time to Asia, and I could not think of a better way to do it with the first time of having a STEAM conference in Hong Kong. I have my title here is putting the A in STEAM because we often think of it as STEM. So let me begin. Showing. There we go. Perfect. So let's start off with what is STEM? STEM versus STEAM are the first two topics that I'll talk about. So I thought we should really be very clear about what that A is for arts, because it's often interpreted in many different ways, and people think of performing arts or being artistic, but I wanted to point out that in that first definition here, the expression or application of human creative skill and imagination. Now, of course, we typically think of as painting of sculptures or music and dance, but I really wanted us to focus on being creative and innovative. That's the things that I think that arts allows us to sort of pull from within. I like how I pose this because when it comes to art, sometimes it doesn't matter how good you are. It's just what the feeling that it brings when you create something. So traditionally, we often have forgotten the arts, and my fellow colleagues in the arts and humanities, I think they feel a little left out. So we're not going to leave them out anymore because we realize that we collectively need all of the parts and pieces together to make us well-rounded individuals, and in this case, focusing on scientists and engineering. I also wanted to reflect a little bit here on something that was said in one of our board meetings. I sit on the National Academies of Science and Engineering and Math, and I am in the committee and board for higher education and workforce. And a colleague said, I don't understand why I'm paying all this tuition for my daughter to take arts when she's majoring in engineering. Now, as a parent, I could understand that reflection, but I know personally that it makes us quite well-rounded. I think that we have to remember that when we have the opportunity, as Steve Jobs says here, it's in Apple's DNA, technology alone is not enough. It's technology married with liberal arts that yields us the results that make our hearts sing. I really want to reflect on my own students. And I've been a teacher from kindergarten all the way through the university level. When we think about a student creating something like the posters we see over there today, or creating anime, or an avatar for a game, or an app, you really have to think through this more than just in a logical, scientific manner. We want to entice, we want to encourage, we want people to be interested. So there's some storyboarding, there's some planning, and all of this pulls together in an artistic way. We're going to look at things like details and color and texture and symmetry and balance. I think that we must say to students, it's an opportunity to be creative and have fun. And it's really important to realize that we do have research findings that say that art should be included in the science classes, and you're going to see some of the ways that some of the students I work with do it in a very fun way. Now, I think many of us may know Mark Cuban, the businessman, and he was making some discussion about the value of liberal arts, and he said here, a lot of coding is eventually going to be taken over by artificial intelligence. And then 20 years from now, if you are a coder, you might be out of a job. Wow, that seems unusual to say because we say how important it is for people to code. But if you look at how he continues, it says, because it's just math. Okay, that's the way he posed it. We know it's more than just math. It's usually some sequencing of events and methodical thought process that goes into coding. But he says here, so whatever we're doing with the AI intelligence, someone's got to know that topic. So it's more than just coding. You need to know the basis of it. And in this case, he's saying if it's AI to emulate Shakespeare, in this case, then that person better know Shakespeare. It made me reflect on something that David Vasco here talked about, how he went to a university to look into a project he was doing with AR, augmented reality. And unusually so, he found that he wasn't in the engineering department. He was actually in the art department. I had a similar opportunity. I was visiting the New York University Tisch School of Arts. And we were talking about partnering with them as a NASA team and having students come on board to help us with publicizing the things that we do. They are uniquely posed in that School of Arts with their new media and games network. They call it Magnet. And a new technology hub with 3 Tisch programs. The Clive Davis Institute of Recorded Music, the Interactive Telecommunications and Interactive Media Arts programs, and then they have a Center for Game Design. Now I'm hoping we're going to get the slides back up because this next slide had beautiful artistic pictures of actually at my alma mater at MIT. And my daughter and I were visiting the Strata Center, and they had these beautiful pictures of biological, I'm going to try and do it again. right? Beautiful pictures. And so for something like this, one is a model in the middle, but then these two biological patterns, I don't think that you would feel the same without seeing this in color and the way that they were able to display it. And it brings a certain value and thought of how powerful such something so small but yet so complex. Without that artistic display, we don't see all of the scientific components that we may be able to digest and to investigate. And then here at my own institution at NASA, we actually decided that we were going to publish art from Mars. And it's such a different environment, but yet you could not begin to understand how different until you see this very beautiful display of the terrain of Mars. So I was asked to talk a little bit about examples, and I could not think further than my own self as to how the things in my life have actually exposed me in a STEAM way. Although we tend to focus on STEAM and STEM, I want to say that it's because of my family. We're really well-rounded. My mother is here, and my daughter is here, and she's an educator as well. But from history and from learning how to draw and also being athletic, all of that was imposed. And I began to go ahead and impose it on the next generation. And so up there, you see it on the very far, your far right, was our first family STEAM camp. And I had 17 kids in my house for 1 week. Can you imagine that? I must say, though, when I started off very young, I had no idea what I would want to do. And so if you look at the things that were interesting to me and the things that I was exposed to or I thought that I could progress forward in as I got older, they're very varied. The one ironic thing is there's nothing sort of technical up there. I think that that is really important when we talk to students about entering a technical career, that they focus on and have the opportunity to experience a variety of experiences. So like this facility here, the Ocean Park International, I took the opportunity to explore the various facilities in Brooklyn, New York, from the parks and the botanical gardens and the Children's Museum, the public library. All of those played a very big impact and role on shaping me as a human being. I thought it would be amiss to not give you guys a taste of what it is in my life and what I actually do, because while this group here tends to focus on things down below, I tend to look at things up in the heavens. I don't hear sound. Well, this is what happens when you're the first speaker, right? So all the kinks skip. There we go.
We have a funny little clip, I call it my theme video. You know, every good hero needs a theme song, right? Seeing all of the different instruments and missions that I've been a part of or solve huge problems is never something that I started out to do. Here at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, I started off doing attitude control systems. We don't say spacecraft having a bad day, but really position and location in space. So often people will call me a rocket scientist because I built and designed systems to control our spacecraft. And then moved into instrument management. I'm really the taskmaster in helping people meet the criteria that a scientist needs to create the cool stuff that you see around us. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, As we say, Bed-Stuy, do or die. I liked math from the very beginning. I played team sports. I still continue to do softball. My comic book favorite is the Caped Crusader. They used their brain and I could too. I moved to Cambridge, Massachusetts for high school. I applied to MIT and got in. But when I graduated from MIT, it was the year of the first shuttle disaster. And that was really hard, and jobs really weren't available at NASA. I went back to school. When I graduated from Howard University, I was the first African-American female to get a PhD in mechanical engineering at the NASA Goddard Space Flight Center. We have 4 science disciplines: helio, earth science, astrophysics, and planetary science. I've worked all different phases of the mission. One of my favorite projects is a Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, because when I was in first grade, we got to see the men go to the moon. It's a satellite that is basically using a laser, what we call a laser altimeter, to measure distances very accurately. You point the laser altimeter down to the surface and then bounce very quickly back up into your detectors and measuring that time in the distances. We're able to create 3-dimensional maps of the moon, so you can see the very small craters down to 3 centimeters in resolution. That is very impactful when you begin to think about traveling in space. You need to know where you're going and where you're going to land. The James Webb Space Telescope is our next huge telescope, and we're hoping that it will actually take that same type of science and data that we've been collecting for Hubble and take it to the next level. It's 28 years in the making, so when they started the concept, the technology did not even exist. And when we're looking at things in space, but we're looking way back in time, we're just finally getting the light. Different frequencies of light give us different clues. Infrared happens to be one of those spectral bands of light. The James Webb Space Telescope will give us some insight as to how quickly Milky Way is expanding, or even how long ago the universe was born. So for myself, this new position that I am, it's really being strategic about what NASA should be doing for the future. We may use sensors that look down at the Earth right now, but they may serve a purpose for us in the Martian environment or moon environment. As we try to figure out how to live on this big blue marble, we're going to succeed by working together. Diverse ideas spark innovation. They collide and create great solutions.
Cool job, right? Yes, I love my job every day. So let's focus on the future, and many of the students here are the future. I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into some of the things that we do back in the States. And I'm using my daughter as an example. So she was like, Mommy, there's a lot of slides in me. And I'm like, yeah, you're a really good example of how we've been infusing STEM and pumping it down her little brain every day. Ariel says that she potentially wants to be an OBGYN that delivers babies in space. And so her future involves all of the different things that you see there. So fast forward, and here she is today. Yes, she's a dancer too, but she's also the top math student in her school. So Ariel has been doing STEM education in her Langdon Education Campus, which at the time it went all the way up to the 8th grade. A while into her career, at the school, they began to decide that DCPS was going to make some changes. So you'll see that it went from a STEM school to a STEAM school. Ariel had the opportunity to actually speak with me at a White House conference when she was in first grade. And this was her speech. She's there with Valerie Jarrett, the senior advisor for President Obama. And when she met Dr. Jarrett, she said, "Can I take a picture with you?" And she said, "Yes, I'm here for you," because the conference was on the marginalization of girls in STEM. And you can see her little speech there. She talked all about the things that she liked to learn, the fact that she liked to use the computer and use the smartboard and play with animals and work with the animals. And I'm always really proud of her because she's taken on new challenges and had an opportunity to be a spokesman for some of the other students and young ladies. Now, mind you, when they asked me if she could speak, they thought she was in high school. She was only 6 years old at the time. That transition from STEM to STEAM at times seemed a little forced. It took a while for our institutions to really identify good criteria and ways to really infuse those different disciplines together. As it says here, a mashup. There's kind of like they just kind of threw things together. Well, over time, I've watched it hone and become better and more purposeful in terms of the sharing of information. This lesson was 2 lessons that were provided to me by Mr. Baton, who's Ariel's music teacher. And the first picture to the left is the 3rd grade through 5th grade, and they're learning mathematical patterns through musical notation. And then the much smaller little children who are pre-K through 3rd, they're learning how to identify mathematical shapes through song and movement. So there's an integration of the music, yet they're at task learning about shapes. And do you guys know the hokey pokey? Yes, you put the right foot in, you put the right foot out. Well, they're doing that, and they're doing it with the shapes. And then this is something here that I developed, which is, let me go back. Hopefully it'll do it without the video. Something that as a parent and the PTO president, which is Parents and Teachers Organization, we started something called Hollow STEAM. And it's a time where we kind of celebrate Halloween, but it is with a STEAM theme. And so there's actually a picture of the Erickson clan there. That's one year when I usually play the mad scientist. And I teach students about electricity. We have hands-on activities. And is the one that kind of was playing with a little bit of noise was a young lady was doing a sensory type of feeling for balls and trying to identify eyes. Ariel's actually been a winner twice over because we have a parade where students have to create their costumes with a STEAM-based costume. And she was a lepidopterist, which is a butterfly specialist one year. And then another year, she was an airplane pilot. Then last year, her best friend, her BFF, won with the skeleton you see there. So we've had a rich opportunity to bring families out at night. They get to do hands-on activities. And then there's one last component where family members can actually decorate their trucks and their cars in the parking lot. And why do kids come out? Because they get candy, right? So they come out to the cars, and we also do a competition, and so it brings the whole family together. Ariel has a bunch of different activities that she does between things that we go out to do. She makes good friends. As you can see down below, one of my favorite books when she had to do a book report on the Moustronaut, which was a story written by Mike Kelly, an astronaut, about a mouse on board the space shuttle. And as you can see, there's a drawing aspect to that piece. She plays the piano, and she's been doing that since she was 3. So I think all of that has helped with her mathematical skills. And yes, she also not only does tap and ballet, but she's a hip-hop dancer. So why did I talk about all of this? Because experts are saying how important it is to engage and discuss and to be focused on K through 12. So not just thinking about the university level, the high school level, in the case you call secondary, but really starting to be very focused at the K through 12. And this is David Vasco, who's actually the Director of Advanced Technology at Rockwell Automation. And he said he had been studying the various educational programs and felt very strongly that it was important to start this early. Now, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with FIRST, which is First Lego League, the competition where you do robotics. It's an international competition, but he said he really felt strongly and loves the whole idea behind it. It was actually started by Dean Kamen. If you know the Segway, he's the inventor for the Segway and the insulin pump for children. But he started this, what we call for inspiration and recognition of science and technology competitions. He voiced, and I agree with him, that the things that students learn, and we saw that today with some of the award winners today of working together and collaborating together, but it goes a bit deeper with FIRST. This year, I was not just a judge, I was a coach for multiple teams. And so there was another aspect that I began to see where teams are almost like creating skits. And they get all dressed up and they play out a role of what they're doing in their competition. This year, it just so happened it was a space theme, living and working in space. And so my own daughter is on one of the teams that I'm lead coach for. And we had our first major competition at Nationals for NSBE, and NSBE is National Society of Black Engineers. We have a student chapter of 130 students. We do First Lego League VEX IQ. We do First Lego League Junior. We also do Math Counts, which is a math competition base. We have Mandarin classes. We have a STEP team. We also have something called Gavel Club, which is like Toastmasters. We do trips to colleges and universities. We have a math coding class. It's called Microsoft Coding Academy. We have a partnership with Microsoft, and that's one of the things that I keep an eye on. And we were able to see quite a bit of growth, such that most of our teams placed well in the competition. And here's their chant, because they actually do sing as part of their cheering each other on and showing teamwork. So they get excited about coding. And so they actually won in the programming category in first place. It's an opportunity for them to shine and to speak in front of judges. They have to do 3 different categories, and they excelled very well. And I think it prepared Ariel as well for her science fair competition. She ended up winning 3rd place at the DC Science Fair in Atmospheric Sciences this year. And so all of this helps to pull in the STEM, and how that occurred. If you look at Ariel's board in 3rd grade, it's kind of plain, right? And then in 4th grade, we started to add more color, and by 5th grade, you can see we jazzed it up and really artistic and really began to blossom. I think all of those things are great for students because they really get into it, but it also allows the judges to see they put the time and effort and the thought processes into it. And then her friend there, Jasmine, again, the BFF, is right in line with her. She did her project on science of slime. Now, I don't know how many people in here have younger children, but slime is the big deal. Like, my house kind of stays a little messy. I see some people nodding their heads. But there's a real science behind it. And I spoke at a school in New Jersey, and they had 100 girls making slime, and they talked about the properties of slime and the chemistry aspect of it, and that's what little Jasmine, but you can see how beautiful and colorful her slime project was. I wanted again to talk about impact, and so here is a school that I actually was watching a movie on Netflix called The Creative Mind. It had several innovators that they were talking to, but towards the end of the movie, they had a school in Burlington, Vermont, Integrated Arts Academy at Burlington, and it was actually a low-performing school. They decided to revamp the entire curriculum to make it a STEAM-based arts focus. And the thing that they really stressed was that they wanted students to be risk takers, that it was safe to think out of the box, to think in an innovative way, and to think and approach, in this case, you see a math lesson there, approach it with a different perspective than just counting things or thinking of it from a mathematical sense, a traditional sense, thinking it through abstract art. And parents as well as teachers said they saw a blossoming of the children. Their test scores are slowly starting to pick up. And so this was a success that was actually identified in this movie. I also wanted to focus on, this is a young lady who's working on her PhD, Danielle Alston at MIT, and she created a program called Geek, which is actually, it's Chic Geek with a combination of it. But she, through community programs and partnerships, and I should have said that about the school in Vermont, they used the community partnerships to help to do this and to create programs. She as well, she has a dance program that allows local dancers to come in and to give workshops, but they're also practicing scientists and engineers, and they get a chance to talk to students about their jobs, and so it's a different way of bonding with a mentor. And then she has a 9-month program where she works with the Girls and Boys Club of Dorchester, Massachusetts for middle school, and they get to do field trips, and they have guest speakers, and they do innovation. But it's for students who are comfortable with being artists, yet have some interest in science and technology and math as well. I wanted to kind of do a little bit of higher level thinking. So under the board that I mentioned, the Board of Higher Education and Workforce, we actually initiated a study, and this was actually a study on the integration of humanities and arts with science, engineering, and medicine. As you can see, the theme says branches from the same tree. So the whole idea of that, although we may be in different disciplines, we're actually all still part of the same growth and moving forward. They really looked at trying to identify programs that were very successful and highlighted that throughout the report. You can actually go online to the National Academies and do a free download or pay a fee to have it mailed. But if you're interested in seeing some of the different aspects, I have one that I highlight here. The evidence was really more of anecdotal than something that they could fully measure because of the infancy of some of these programs, but they could definitely see that there was improved written and oral and communication skills for many of the students, and this ranged from high school through some of them were college students. They were able to see the teamwork skills, of course, ethical decision-making, and critical thinking, which is a must. There's also a side of empathy, and that thing that you sort of get, I think, more so with the arts than what we traditionally hear of us science and techie types. But they really wanted to make sure that they were good indicators in improving science literacy, that these skills would help to prepare students for work, life, and civic engagement in the 21st century. So I'm highlighting one here, and there's some observations that they made because they really wanted to connect it back to the educational outcomes, but then for employers, how does this really help? But it said here, an employee survey consistently shows that employees want well-rounded individuals with a holistic education who can take on complex problems and understand the needs and desires and motivations of others. This young lady actually has a prosthetic limb on. Anika Emmer is using a solution for what they call the flower arm, and Limbitless Solutions is a nonprofit that actually helps produce personal bionics for students or for young people. Are we? Did we just switch over? I think so, because it's not on that screen here. Okay, there it goes. Well, no, it's not. Yeah, okay, so he's up there doing it. Okay, so could you move to the next slide? So this may seem funny to talk about toys, but toys are really important. And they're extremely important. So this is a committee here and they're advocating for the use of toys. Now, if you look down, I highlighted Roger Mellini, who is an astrophysicist and an editor and art science researcher. He co-directs the Art Science Lab in the University of Texas at Dallas and the School of Art, Technology, and Emerging Communications. He actually said that working on hard problems can sometimes only be solved by combining STEM with the arts, design, or humanities. Next slide, please. There was some emphasis throughout the report, and there were several ones that I wanted to highlight. And they talked about working with your hands and growing the brains. It was so nice to see some of the competitors today and yesterday when they talked about the things that they actually were building and creating, an opportunity for them to work together with those skills, the motor skills. But there's something that is encouraged by the toys that encourage these fine motor skills and added benefit for growing the brain. And even stressed, and I remember my mother saying this one time to me when Ariel was counting on her fingers, and I was like, Mom, she's counting on her fingers, and she was like, let her do it. That's a good thing. So remember, it's okay for your kids to count on your fingers, and I think that some of us older people from time to time do it. So this Toy Story here is something that I loved about my daughter when she got her Christmas toys. And playtime is extremely important. It's an opportunity for students to be creative. There's no right or wrong. Yes, as I said, there's no right or wrong, because we can dress up too. Yeah, that's me. Yeah, I'm the Batgirl there. And Ariel is Wonder Woman or Wonder Girl. And she said,
what did you say about those Legos?
Yes.
I got the bomb Legos.
You were singing?
I got the bomb.
So much important that she can't even talk about the bomb Legos. But she's dancing up a storm about Legos.
They're the what?
Bomb Legos.
Well, you better tell Uncle Todd thank you.
Thank you, Uncle Todd.
All right.
So I must say to the women in the audience, I'm so happy that they make Legos for girls now. It's an opportunity for our girls to shine and to have something to connect with, but Legos are really cool. It's a chance for you to be confident, take a risk, build something, and it's no right or wrong with Legos unless you're always following the directions. But it's a chance to build confidence. Toys give children a chance to be involved and passionate about STEAM. Mistakes are okay. It's a chance to be collaborative and build social skills when they play with their friends. Taking healthy risks in a playful environment is very important. And I know that sometimes teachers are saying our children are not willing to take risks. But if you want to be innovative, go to the next slide, please, then you need to be able to take risks. Find that being a risk-averse society does not allow us to grow and to come up with new solutions, ways for us to help relate other things together, things that are different, taking on those challenges, and as we say, integrating the arts into STEAM projects. Next slide, please. So we must be open-minded if we want to raise scientists, artists, or successful individuals in general. We must imagine the things they have. It may not have been created before, right? But we're allowing kids to play. It could be humming a tune. It could be drawing something. It could be making slime. There's no one way particular to play. Next slide, please. We said keep it simple. I can remember when she was little and I threw the pots and pans out there, right? It's just what a kid likes to do. They just want to have fun. No step-by-step instructions. Sometimes just a few objects are simpler than more creativity comes out. Next slide. I have quite a number of lists, but I'm just going to give you the highlights here for people that are interested. I'll scan through really quickly. We use KiwiCompany.com. It has a monthly subscription, in comes a box, got everything in it, and they go to work. A few examples, and this one I like because it actually integrated convection and how do you create convection. Next slide, please. Is it stuck again? Can you go to the next slide if you can? There we go. One more, please. There we go. This was actually a spinning snake, and it uses convection. They provide online ability to explain the whole theory and idea behind heat rising that makes the snake spin. Very simple, but yet very important concept. Next slide, please. And then this one here was more about kinetic energy and stored energy, and then creating a chain reaction. So there's a part of building it, yet there's an opportunity to see something kind of explode apart, which kids love to do. Next slide. And then NASA offers a lot of different opportunities to share for students. You can go online, from career opportunities to looking at a professional to ambassadors and posters and things that you can make. Next slide. To competitions like similar to the one that you had today. We have one called OpSpark, which is themed around Optimus Prime. And it's an opportunity for grades from 3 to 12 to actually create a spin-off technology based on a theme, a science or technology theme that we give them. Next slide. Lots of different fun activities. I thought this one, next slide, please. The next one is actually an opportunity for families to work together to do planetary type science. We're still stuck. I'm going to keep going. One more. Next slide, and I like this. One of the spin-outs from this is creating an edible model of the sun. Kids love making cookies. And so you can come up with a very cool model of the sun through licorice and M&Ms and icing and that kind of thing. We actually have one of our Helios physicists doing that on center sometimes with students. Next slide. I'm going to stress again how important it is to let children and be risk takers and change makers. And when I say children, I mean all the way through high school. Students think that once they've gotten to that point, that they are no longer a child, but keep the child in you. Next slide, please. One more. So I love this particular website, and it is an opportunity where students are working with astrophysicists. Can you go one more slide, please? Two more, actually. And then Astro Olympics. And I thought this was pretty cool because I saw a Chinese athlete on the very beginning. Go one more and then play the clip. You have to tap it, please.
The key to the Olympics is motion.
Go back one.
How athletes run.
It's playing here.
Throw. Spin.
So you can't see the images, but they're showing the Olympic athletes. But as you can see here, they're concepts of physics, as well as, I'm going to try it again. Tap the screen if you can, and it'll start the movie. There you go. So Astro Olympics project explores the spectacular range of science and comparing them to athletic motion.
With the awesome spectacles of the cosmos. The key to the Olympics is motion. How athletes run.
So there's sound with it, but I don't hear it. Let's go to that next slide. So I don't know if anybody can recognize the athletes, but I thought it was kind of cool that we're both showing in the winter sports as well as in the summer sports in this case. Next slide, please. And then it just opportunities to talk about speed, mass, time, pressure, rotation, distance, all of the concepts that we apply, in particular in the physics domain, but and then the application of an athlete. So, can you go to the next slide, please? So I have often reflected on how important the visions that we get around us influence us in the careers that we consider, and this was one that I grew up with. Yes, I was a Trekkie, and I must say that it allowed me to think outside of the sort of norm of a kid growing up in Brooklyn, and to think about maybe being engaged and involved in space because of Lieutenant Uhura being on the screen. And then next slide. I had no idea, one more please. Yes, that's her. She's a gracious woman. I had no idea about people like this, who we know as the hidden figures. I'm going to skip this because we're pressed for time. We're almost done. Can you skip this slide? Although it's kind of funny. So engineers, go back one. Engineers have often looked like these geeky guys that you see there, and scientists. But in this instance, we're all talking about sort of diversity. And in this case, we're talking about diversity of careers and topics and the things that we express and work towards. For me, there are other ways that diversity presents itself. Here I am at a largely Asian-dominated conference, an African-American woman sharing the ideas and themes that work across cultural divisions of people. I didn't necessarily think that I would end up in the careers that I have, but when we're talking about working on things like the space station and exploring the depths of the oceans, we need to work collectively together. And so I often have said it takes a partnership of many. Next slide, please. Hit it twice. When astronauts have looked from above, they don't see boundaries, they don't see borders. Okay, you can see the Great Wall of China from space, but in general, you don't see lines that separate countries. Next slide, please. When Gene Roddenberry began this sort of theme of Star Trek, he had a very diversified group of people working across their differences and creating something wonderful and phenomenal like Star Trek, across the heavens and exploring new places. Next slide. I often say that when diverse ideas collide, they spark innovation. So let's embrace arts, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. I say full steam ahead. Next slide, please. I say thank you for inviting me to the conference, and I hope that is one of the most successful ones that you have in the future. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Dr. Arison, for sharing your own story and your daughter's story, and also various projects to promote how to integrate arts component in the STEM education. Actually, there is a platform, online conference platform for you to raise questions to Dr. April and keynote speakers, and also in the next forum discussion section. So if you have the access to the conference online platform, you just need to go to the live Q&A, and you will see that there is a section for forum discussion Q&A on the 21st of June. So you can start putting down some questions you would like to ask to our keynote speakers. And now we come to the second keynote seminars, which is going to be delivered by Professor Charles Taylor. And it's my role to introduce him about his biography before he comes on stage. Professor Peter Charles Taylor is the professor of STEAM education and also the adjunct professor of transformative education at Murdoch University, Australia. He is also the chair of International Transformative Educational Research Network, aiming to provide transformative professional development for teachers in universities and schools throughout the Indo-Pacific region. His work for education integrates the arts and science to develop students' transdisciplinary dispositions that include critical reflection, ethical astutness, connectiveness, and also creativity. All these are essential capabilities for living and working sustainably in this very complex and contested world in the 21st century. Now, may I invite Professor Peter Charles Taylor to share his expertise on how transformative STEAM education can develop our students' transdisciplinary capabilities. Professor Charles Taylor, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that kind invitation. If you'll just excuse me, I'm going to do a technology check.
So you'll be controlling the computer up there.
Up there?
So
okay.
Like for your videos, you cannot be like fast forward, but like we can just play that.
So, like April, I've got animations. Can I use? This will help with the animations.
Yes, actually, like everything is still work like yesterday, but
Yeah.
things like but you
Good.
what you mentioned is that you will fast forward your videos.
Yeah.
Don't be working.
Right. Okay. Let's see how we go.
So, disturbing it?
Yeah. No. I need that open. I need that open. Can you?
You need yours?
Yeah. I need mine. As much as I love April's, I need mine. Good. And I need the presentation view, not the. Yeah, let's see. Good. Just need to get it up there. Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you. Look, I'm just so happy and grateful to have been invited to this extraordinarily innovative conference. There's nothing like this in Australia. STEAM education is just being born across Australia. STEM rules, and there is a distinct difference between the two, which I'll explain to you. So from what I've seen so far, the innovative work by these students at university and at schools across Hong Kong in the STEAM space is very, very inspiring. And I think that Ocean Park is very well situated with the support from the government and from the university sector to really take a leading role in the Asia-Pacific region in relation to STEAM education. We can't live by acronyms alone. So STEM or STEAM are just acronyms, and we need to unpack them. We need good educational theory to inform our unpacking of these acronyms. So what I intend to do in the next little while is to talk to you about why I think it's really, really important to bring in the A into STEM, but also more than that, another T, and that's transformative learning theory. So we end up with ST squared EAM, and I challenge you to pronounce that. And it's particularly important because the focus here is on sustainability education. STEM has been a magnificent endeavour for the last several hundred years since the Industrial Revolution, and even in the West, and even before that in China, where many of the ideas came from to inform the Western progress model. And we now have all these incredible things that, as a child in the 1950s, were even undreamt of. And I won't unpack each one of those, but just to point out Sophia, for example, a robot, a humanoid who's been given citizenship status, or I think it's Saudi Arabia. So we're getting closer and closer to having robots and human beings converging. That sounds exciting, particularly in the context of transportation. But I'd like you to consider something else beyond that. When robots have got a high degree of autonomy because of advanced artificial intelligence, that they can go out and have dinner with each other in a romantic setting. Okay, first technology glitch. My screen and this screen are not correlated. Is that because I'm using the keypad? Okay, so if I go to the next one.
Yep. So you just need to go.
Using that?
Yep.
Okay. You know, I rehearsed this yesterday and it was perfect. But using somebody else's computer, it's always a steep learning curve. So I apologise for the glitches that I think are going to happen. Okay, so a little quote there. Oh, that's crazy. My parents were vacuum cleaners too. So you've got a couple of humanoids, very advanced, having a conversation over dinner. And if anybody has seen this movie, it really brings it home with great emotional force. It's about a guy who designs humanoids, and he brings a young fellow in, the guy in the middle, to spend a week living with this very attractive female robot to test her, to give her the Turing test. That is, can he differentiate between the robot and a human being? And as the movie unfolds, I won't spoil the plot for you, but the robot becomes more intelligent than the person who's testing her, and all sorts of unexpected things happen. So science fiction has always led the way with our imaginations in the STEM area, and I highly recommend this because it raises a particular ethical issue. Not that one yet, but the one before it. Here we go. I think I just found the right button on this thing. Okay, the ethical dilemma of my screen and that screen are out of sync, so it's a little bit awkward. Okay, the ethical dilemma of human rights. Should robots, advanced robots with artificial intelligence, have human rights? And the word should means it's an ethical issue. And ethics at the moment is largely missing in a formal sense from our STEM education. And that's where the arts are so important. And I'll elaborate on that in a little while. The arts brings in an ability, a set of capabilities for considering extremely important and pressing ethical issues. And I've just used the little robot here as an example of a much bigger problem that we have. And that is... Next slide. The Anthropocene. Now, you've probably heard of the term anthropology. It's about the study of humans, about study of cultures. The people who work in geophysics have coined this new term, the Anthropocene, as a new era that means that, and in the words of Steve Fuller, here we go. In the words of Steve Fuller, the human imprint on the global environment has become so large and active that it rivals some of the great forces of nature in its impact on the functioning of the Earth's systems. So we're talking here about the natural systems being the atmosphere, being the oceans, and also the landmass. The Earth has been able to look after itself for billions of years until humans evolved. And in this modern era, we have such a very large footprint that we're disturbing many of the natural systems. Not the least of which is me right now. Okay, there's a metaphor, there's a visual metaphor for our footprint. And you can actually get a personal measurement of your human footprint by going to that website and filling in a survey, and it calculates numerically the impact of your personal footprint on the Earth. And I did it for myself. And if everybody lived like me, everybody in the world, it tells me that we would need 6 Earths. So we obviously don't want everybody in the world to live like me, even though I'm very sustainability conscious. So we're using up the world's resources at a rapid and alarming rate. And that is why... Oh, there. So there's a robot up there controlling my slides. Oh, right, okay. We need to have an ethical conversation about what it's doing to me. Okay, all right, good. Learning on the job here. As good teachers always do, you know, nothing goes according to plan all the time. So, okay, here's a little. The Earth is in a bad state, and all the other planets in the solar system are very concerned about the problem that the Earth has. It's getting sicker and sicker, and there doesn't seem to be any way of recovery. The problem is the Earth has humans. I don't know which one is Mars, but Mars is also looking a bit worried too as we continue to take our civilization to that planet. So what should I say? Next slide, please. Is that the idea? Okay, so this is where we live, all of us. There's no alternative. We have to look after it. Unfortunately, the Earth is suffering from a number of severe crises. The ones that I'm particularly interested in my work, is avoiding cultural extinction through the loss of languages, climate emergency, which recently was called climate change, but now that the International Panel of Climate Scientists have released their latest report, we know that we have until 2030 to turn things around, to limit average global temperature increase by 1.5 degrees. And that's the subject of the Paris Agreement. And if we don't do it and we get to 2.5 degrees, your typhoons that you have at the moment will seem quite minor and minuscule. But the one that I want to address today is plastic pollution, particularly of the marine environment and where it comes from. So there's a movie here that I put together from bits and pieces on the internet just to show you the scope and scale of this problem. Now, I'm not sure that I can start it, so maybe the folks upstairs. There we go. So these were just accessed off the internet. There's nothing special about it. There's no copyright. And there should be some sound just to make it more emotionally engaging. Some sound. So I really focused on countries in our region, the Asia-Pacific region. So this is in Manila. That's a canal, by the way. It's not a footpath.
Filthy, seething sea of trash is an open dump. It is actually a dam. The rubbish covers 200,000 square meters and in some places piles up to 1 meter high. Bordering the provinces of Guangdong and Hunan, Lechang Gorge Dam is a major flood control facility for the Beijiang River, the northern tributary of southern China's Pearl River. The dam is also the main source of drinking water for some 180,000 locals. Torrential rain in late March washed down all this trash, making the area unsafe for people and damaging the environment downstream.
Bangkok, 12 million people producing plastic waste. Much of it ends up here in the city's canals. Cups, bottles, food containers and bags. Plastic so tough it can last hundreds of years without degrading. Huge amounts of waste is carried into rivers and then onwards to the ocean. Rivers like the Mekong, which flows through 6 Asian countries, China, Myanmar, Cambodia, Thailand, Laos and Vietnam, before dumping the waste into the South China Sea.
Okay, you can cut it at that point, stop the movie.
The harbour from the Sydney Harbour Bridge and the Opera House. Beautiful, iconic location, and this beach is hammered with plastic. The things that we'll find on this beach are very likely to be consumer items.
Okay. There are lots of movies. I'd love to show all of them to you, but there just isn't time. So that is a look at Sydney Harbour, the beaches around there, and the amount of single-use plastic pollution that is washed up on those shores. So Australia is just as implicated in this problem as all the other countries in the region. So this is basically what we're facing: massive plastic pollution of our oceans, coming from our river systems, looking aesthetically very bad, but much more than that, very, very dangerous indeed. And I do have another movie. Now, I don't want to show the whole thing because it's quite long, but if my kind movie director upstairs could start it at 1 minute 50, if that's possible. If we can get it started and then fast forward to 1 minute 50. Is it possible to fast forward?
Because it's durable, and plastic is terrible because it is durable. Almost every piece of plastic ever made is still on the planet in some form or another. Plastic production globally this year is expected to be more than 300 million tonnes.
Half of which we'll use just once and then throw away. By 2050, when the population explodes to almost 10 billion people, it's expected that plastic production will triple. The problem with that is that today only a fraction of the plastic that we produce is recycled. The rest ends up in our environment, and it's coating our land and our oceans like a disease.
Garbage thrown away in the United States can make its way to Antarctica. Plastic in our coastal waters is pulled into the centre of massive wind-driven, churning circular gyres. There are many other ocean currents also diverting the trash all around the surface of the ocean. In reality, it's just one ocean with no boundaries. Lord Howe Island is a World Heritage Site and home to migratory seabirds like the shearwater.
Seabirds are incredibly helpful because they act like an army of scientists. They travel thousands of miles across the ocean. They pick up plastic off the surface of the ocean. They bring it back to their rookeries where they feed it to their chicks, and that provides an incredible amount of scientific data in terms of where the plastic comes from, its distribution, and how it breaks up on the ocean surface. Dr. Jennifer Lavers, she's devoted her life to studying the plight of seabirds.
Yeah, this is really what I wanted us to have a look at.
Shearwaters are incredible birds. They migrate thousands of miles, stopping only here to breed.
Yeah, the stomach is very, very full, and if we look here, there's some very dark pieces, some very light white pieces, and if you see, as I push on this, it's absolutely rigid, completely full of plastic all the way up.
Oh, look at that.
Absolutely no doubt this bird died as a result of that plastic. That is literally a gut full of plastic. It's quite alarming, isn't it?
Oh, it's awful.
Range of plastic types and colours. We've got everything from the blues and the reds
His
to the
stomach's just filled with it. Big pieces too.
big sharp
Heavy.
pieces.
Oh wow, look at the size of that big black piece.
That is an enormous piece of plastic.
Unbelievable. Look at the size of that.
Okay, thanks. Can you cut that, please? Stop it. They counted over 200 pieces of plastic, and it's not a world record for them. I've seen that quite a number of times, and I find it gruesome on a number of levels, particularly, if you love animals. So the next slide, please. Okay, so one of the problems with plastics is that it becomes invisible when it gets into the waterways after a period of time. It doesn't dissolve necessarily. What it tends to do is to break down into smaller and smaller and smaller pieces, which are called microplastics, and that can be almost invisible. They can be 1/10 of a millimetre. Some of those were in the bird, but obviously there were bigger ones as well. That's a picture of my local supermarket in Perth. It's absolute nonsense to wrap bananas in plastic in the supermarket. So, we've got a long way to go. Even though that supermarket no longer provides single-use plastic bags, you have to bring your own container. They still present most of their foodstuffs in plastic wrap. Where does it go? Have we got good recycling systems? And we're only really starting to get there. Single-use plastic straws, and with clothing, often we'll get a lovely fleecy warm top, although possibly not in Hong Kong. And when we wash it, of course, all the little fibres come out and go down the drain, and they go through the filtration systems of the water purification and out into the ocean. Microplastics. Next slide. Okay, I've just covered that really. Next one, please. So it's not just a physical problem that you consume plastic and it gives you a stomach ache or, stops you from eating any other food. Each little tiny piece of plastic attracts other toxic chemicals, and there's just a good example. So if you're teaching chemistry education, there's a good opportunity to put this knowledge of compounds, molecules and so on into this particular context. Next slide. I would like to show you a couple of other videos, but I think it'll take too long. There's some pretty horrific stuff. Have anybody seen the video of the sea turtle that has been taken out of the ocean, and it has something stuck in its nose, and over about 2 or 3 grueling minutes they pull out a plastic straw, and the sea turtle was in absolute agony and there's blood dripping down. The whale, beached whales, this particular one in Thailand, washed up, they cut it open, its stomach was full of kilograms and kilograms of plastic bags. So I show you these things, and I put a big effort to emphasise the problem, because I think we really need to engage with the problem at an emotional level, not just a theoretical level. Next slide. We jump that one onto the next one. That's it. So the World Economic Forum released a report in 2016, and that said that each year at least 8 million tonnes of plastics leak into the ocean, which is the equivalent of dumping the contents of one garbage truck into the ocean every minute. And if that's not bad enough, then next animation, please. The ocean is expected to contain, by the year 2025, 1 tonne of plastic for every 3 tonnes of fish. And by 2050, the year I turn 100, more plastics than fish by weight under the current conditions. And I find that absolutely staggering and appalling. Next slide. And we'll look 10 seconds of this only. I went to Bali as a young man as a backpacker for holidays. It was a beautiful, organically rich country. Since plastics have arrived, guess what? if you like scuba diving or going in the ocean, this is what you can see around the Balinese coastline. Okay, that'll do, thank you. And stop that. Next slide. So what we have here is a legacy that we're creating, an intergenerational legacy for the children of the future. And I'm so pleased that the children today are waking up to this and protesting en masse worldwide, marching through the streets, walking out of the school for the day and saying, it's our future, we demand action. They have a moral imperative driving them forward, and rightly so. Next slide. So we have an ethical dilemma here, and this is the concept that I want to end on, the notion of teaching ethical dilemmas in the STEM space, making it a STEAM space. So we have the convenience of single-use plastics and everything that entails around that with production and manufacturing costs and profit versus the cost to the environment. Next slide. And this requires urgent action. Move on. Okay, so, yep, another one, please. So what I'm proposing here is that, just go back one, is that in STEM education, we don't just deal with objective factual knowledge, which is my experience as a student and subsequently as a science and physics teacher. I was guilty of that too. But we bring in values education. Now, values exist to a small degree. Kids are told to shut up, sit down, be quiet, respect the teacher. There are values there, but I want to go beyond that. I want to have values that connect with the imperative of sustainability education. Next slide, please. Oh, yeah, okay, next slide. Next one, we'll skip that. Okay, so these are some of the images that you might associate with the traditional approach to teaching science and maths, which is what I did in my early days. And I think, it's not altogether unknown that this exists in classrooms today. And it's a very constraining approach to engaging students in learning. Next slide, please. And perhaps overstating the case, this is assessment. And this kind of assessment really doesn't win the day when it comes to STEAM education. Next slide. So how do we overcome these problems? How do we have an education system, next slide, that is going to be inspiring? And teachers need to go through a process of professional development that is inspiring. So where do we get our inspiration from? There are many different places. In Indonesia, many teachers are of the Islamic faith, and they draw their inspiration from the Quran. But there are many places, next slide please, that we can go to for inspiration. I'll just familiarise you with the Earth Charter. We stand at a critical moment in Earth's history, a time when humanity must choose its future. As the world becomes increasingly interdependent and fragile, the future at once holds great peril and great promise. To move forward, we must recognise that in the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and life forms, we are one human family and one Earth community with a common destiny. We must join together to bring forth a sustainable global society founded on respect for nature, universal human rights, economic justice, and a culture of peace. Wonderful altruistic principles. Towards this end, it is imperative that we, the peoples of Earth, declare our responsibility to one another, to the greater community of life, and to future generations. It's the intergenerational issue I mentioned earlier. Next slide. And from the United Nations, that's been battling away with UNESCO for at least 20 years now, trying to engage us in education for sustainable development. Their latest report in 2030, the Agenda for Sustainable Development, there's a small quote there. Education that engages young people in debate about their ethical convictions, about environmental, political, socio-cultural and economic issues, giving rise to a possible transformation of their values and beliefs. So we're getting closer and closer now to seeing and understanding what we need to add to the STEM curriculum and teaching space if we're going to observe the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And the word transformation there is particularly apt. I'm going to unpack that shortly. Next slide, please. I gained my inspiration from nature directly, and there's a little book down the bottom there, or a big book I should say, called Biophilia, The Love of Nature. And I strongly recommend you reading it. It's written by a biologist. It's about his personal experience in fieldwork, written in a first-person narrative voice about his love of the natural world. And that's the Annapurna, a mountain that I was able to get close to in October last year. It's absolutely inspiring. It's called a golden sunrise. So next slide. And this is where we turn to arts education. I think I'll skip that. Next slide, please. As April has told us, the arts have all sorts of, that's it, hold it there. The arts have many things to offer, very, very powerful. The arts writ large is about bringing creativity, aesthetics, ethics and rhetoric into the STEM mix. So, April's done a great job of pointing out the importance of creativity and aesthetics as well, and I'm focusing here today mainly on the issue of ethics, on virtues, human rights and social justice. And by rhetoric we mean freeing children in STEM classrooms from writing objectively about the information that they're learning and bringing their own personal voices in so that they can explain to themselves, to their fellow students and to teachers who want to assess them about their experience of the learning process. And in that process, reflecting critically on the relationship between their learning experiences and the world at large. Next slide. And do you get it? Okay, next slide. So we need an inspirational philosophy of learning for sustainable development, and next slide tells us that that's readily available from transformative learning theorists. And if you hit the animation for me, throughout the 20th century, animation, next. Oh, no, sorry, you're one ahead of me. Go back to the previous slide and hit the animation. There we go, that's what I wanted. These are giants, scholars of the 20th century, in the West, of course, and I'm not saying there aren't any in the East. My colleagues in Nepal and Thailand are drawing on Eastern wisdom traditions at the same time. So, if you've done postgraduate studies, you may have come across some of these gigantic figures in philosophy and psychology, from Paulo Freire, Abraham Maslow, Jacques Mezirow, Carol Gilligan, Parker Palmer, and of course John Dewey, one of the early 20th century's greatest philosophers, drawing on all of their work. Jacques Mezirow distilled this transformative learning theory, and I'll go to the next slide. And I've distilled it down into 5 principles, which will appear shortly. Hit the animation for me. Good. So, very quickly at the top there, transformative learning is about helping students to engage with nature and engage with each other in relational learning. It's about social critique. It's about engaging students in learning to develop a critical voice about social issues. That's a kind of a finger-pointing thing. What's going wrong with the world around us and who's responsible? But it's also these 3 fingers pointing back this way, and that's where self-reflection is important. What are my values? What's my culpability in creating and reinforcing the problems? Do I take a plastic shopping bag, and why? Do I drink water out of a plastic bottle, and why? What do I do with it when I'm finished, and why? So self-reflection is just so important. Then we have ethical envisioning, which brings in the shoulds. What should I do? How should I behave? How should we approach the problems of global climate change? So values, very important, social values. And finally, a commitment to putting things into action. So altogether, I call this developing a sense of moral agency. And I think that's so important if we're going to bring STEM into the 21st century to address the global crises, particularly sustainable development. That means that the arts can bring in all sorts of interesting expressions and modes of representation, and transformative learning theory gives us, as educators, the intellectual and scholarly power for curriculum development and for teaching and learning development. And that's really what's missing if you just look at the acronym STEM all by itself. It doesn't speak necessarily to how students learn and how teachers can collaborate to form multicultural, multidisciplinary curricula. Next slide. And just very briefly, this is a book that came out this year. It's a book that demonstrates how transformative learning theory has been very, very successful at the postgraduate level, engaging doctoral and master's students of education, of STEM education, into a self-oriented inquiry into their own philosophies of teaching and learning. And a number of them are here. If the lights are on, I'll get them to stand up, and they will be presenting posters and oral presentations in the next couple of days. So the next slide. So the challenge is, how can we introduce transformative learning into STEM classrooms? So it's all very well to have all these lovely altruistic principles, but how can we do it? I think April has demonstrated some ways that that's possible, and I'll just focus on one particular way. Next slide. In the audience, we have Dr. Elizabeth Lily Taylor, who brought to Australia a very powerful approach called ethical dilemma story pedagogy. She brought it from her home country of Austria, and there's a book available down there for purchase. And what it's about is engaging kids in ethical dilemma thinking in STEM classrooms. So I'm not going to try and unpack this now, but there are a couple of people in the audience, doctoral students from Thailand and Indonesia, who will, 5 minutes left, thanks, who will be giving poster presentations, and I would encourage you, if you're interested in this, to go and have a talk to them about how they are bringing ethical dilemma teaching and learning into teacher education and into K-12 classrooms. So basically, very basically, it's about creating stories with children as the characters in those stories. And I was really pleased to see yesterday in the hackathon that a number of university students have developed projects for Ocean Park based around storytelling and role play. And I think we can take this into classrooms. In fact, we are doing that with this approach. So the focus, the topic, is both on disciplinary knowledge, whether it be chemistry education, biology education, or whatever. That disciplinary knowledge combined in various ways with values education through the story's characters. And children, therefore, in that scenario in the classroom, they engage in personal, individual, reflective thinking. They get into pairs and they share their ideas, and then they get into small groups and they try to reach some form of consensus about the best way forward to solve these social problems. We call this socially responsible science for the science educators, and there's the starting point. Science educators are taking it on in their own classrooms, and that's the seed. The next step is to collaborate with colleagues in the arts and so on. So this is not about displacing disciplinary knowledge and skills, it's about complementing and enriching the learning opportunities in those classrooms. Okay, next slide. We'll jump through that. That's Dr. Yuli Ramwati at University Negeri Jakarta. She's bringing this into her M-Teach program. Next slide. This is a doctoral student of mine and Dr. Lily Taylor, who head of science, and he brought this approach into teaching genetics, where he introduced genetics into his Year 10 science classroom. And what he brought in was the ethics of genetically modified food. So the students got to learn not just about the objective scientific knowledge of genetics, but the social implications of genetically modifying the foods that we eat. And that website link will take you to the story that he used with his class. That was a doctoral study, and it revealed a lot about student engagement, willingness and unwillingness to move into this new learning space. Next slide, please. Okay, we have somebody in the audience up there, Piang Pratueng Sukmalanam from Konkan University in Thailand, a doctoral student, and this is very close to the topic that I'm talking on today. Her PhD research, investigating ethical dilemma teaching and learning in the science classroom, moving towards STEAM education, and the curriculum is science, chemistry and polymers. Now, as a doctoral student, she's doing the teaching herself in the laboratory school next to the university, and she's using a qualitative, largely a qualitative approach to reflect on the impact of her STEAM teaching on student learning. And she has a poster, and I suggest if you're interested, you go and have a chat to her about the progress that she's making. She wrote a really lovely dilemma story about the use of plastics in Thailand. Next slide, and we're getting toward the end here. So summing up, STEAM education with 2 T's in it, the second one being for transformative education, so we might just call it transformative STEAM education, provides educators with a philosophy of sustainability education for the 21st century. It urges teachers, it provides a justification, a curriculum justification for transdisciplinary, or if you like, multidisciplinary curriculum design, but not just focusing on content, focusing on these transdisciplinary capabilities like creative thinking, like ethical awareness, and like critical reflective thinking and so on, which are not discipline specific, but they're overarching capabilities for employment, which is very important. It's the #1 imperative in most Western democracies. School must fuel the workforce, but equally importantly, citizenship. And that's a 1 minute, thanks. That's a really important overarching philosophy in Indonesia, that all disciplines must teach kids citizenship education. And that's why ethical dilemma pedagogy is finding traction in Indonesian university teacher education programs. And I think we'll have one final slide. Okay, this give us. So I'm drawing on my physics background here. This is quantum theory, the notion of quantum entanglement, and I'm using it as a backdrop to illustrate that around the world at the moment we have many, many acronyms, and they all have something to do with each other, but none of them is going to win the day alone. But I'm putting forward transformative STEAM education as the next best step forward in order to provide educators with the opportunity to enrich their teaching practices and students' learning experiences, and particularly to address these global crises and emergencies that we just cannot ignore. Okay, final slide. We'll skip the movie.
There's something I need to tell you.
We'll skip the movie.
This relationship isn't working.
She has a relationship breakdown with plastic, so it's a lovely thing to watch. It's very compelling, but we're sort of running out of time. The 3 R's, it used to be reading, writing and arithmetic, but now reduce your use of plastics, reuse them if you have to use them, and recycle by all means. It's the new 3 R's, so that's the take-home message. Okay, in Indonesia, terima kasih, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much for Professor Taylor's keynote seminar. I'm sure that all of us have learned so much with the keynote speakers today. Let's give a big clap for all of our keynote speakers again. Thank you very much. All right, so coming up next, we will have a forum discussion on the topic of STEAM for all. And later, we will have our honorable guests to come up and be joined by our facilitator, Professor Becky Liu, who is the head of Department of Geography from University of Hong Kong. And they will be talking about how STEAM are for all and how they would be talking about how the STEAM education could be implied in our education systems. All right, so let us welcome Dr. Erickson and Professor Taylor to come on the stage again, as well as Professor Ng Tai Kai, the Executive Director of the Hong Kong Academy of Gifted Education, and Mr. Lau Chun Hung, the Principal of Lok Sin Tong Yu Kan Hing Secondary School, Hong Kong. And please also welcome Professor Becky Liu, our facilitator. Thank you.
hopefully. Thank you.
So great. I hope you have a fruitful morning. The next event that we have would be lunch. So it's supposed to be at 1 p.m. So I'm eager to make sure that we will finish on time so that everyone can have enough time to go to the lunch venue. So my smartphone will ring at 12:55, so that would alert us and to, kind of move ahead to the lunch venue. So actually, I was quite excited to moderate this particular session because with such a distinguished panel, I think we can talk about a lot of very important issues in STEM education. But instead, I would like to focus on a topic that I'm quite passionate about, which is STEAM education for all. So I think the most important thing is that we have to recognize, even though nowadays a lot of people still ignore or refuse to accept, the fact remains that there are many barriers to STEAM education for all. So it's important that we recognize that this is a topic not just for the minorities or for the disadvantaged, but it's actually about every one of us. Because if talents across different groups have not been properly groomed and developed, scientific progress in all fields will slow down. And I think, right now, these barriers range from the gender gap, racial prejudice, various socioeconomic inequities, and sometimes quite frustrating cultural stereotypes. So I want to, therefore, to the audience, I think there's a lot of teachers and educators among us. So let's think about that wonderful experience that you have empowered a person. So whether it's the girl who thought that ladies are born to be weak in mathematics, to become a major in engineering, or that timid boy from an immigrant family who becomes a medical doctor. With your support and with your encouragement. So I think recognizing all these gaps is an essential step if we really want to address STEAM education for all. So I want to share with you some statistics with the panelists as well as with the audience first. So this is just a handy example where statistics are readily available in relation to STEAM education. So these 3 slides are based on the 2015 data for all major American and Canadian engineering colleges, including all the big names like Georgia Institute of Technology, MIT, UC Davis, UCLA, Stanford. And it covers all engineering fields, from the popular ones like civil engineering, mechanical, electrical and electronic, as well as computer science, to the more specialized ones like aerospace, petroleum, and mining. So over 100,000 bachelor engineering degrees were awarded in 2015. So out of these, can you guess what percentage was awarded to women? Around 20%. A figure that has not changed much in the last decade. So if we move higher to the master's and the doctoral degree, so women's shares stay about the same, slightly higher, suggesting that women do have that appetite and that ability for further studies. Yet, this share remained at about 20 to 25%. Now, this brings me to a last slide. Now, this was a myth that I have really been pondering about for the last 21 years since I became an academic. So here, you see that the share of women at the rank of assistant professor, it was roughly the share of women obtaining doctoral degree, isn't it? right? About 23.2%. Yet, as we move higher to the higher academic rank, the share of women became systematically lower, just around 10%. So what has happened in the process, and what can be done to aspire women to really continue to pursue their talents, while at the same time, while we contribute to our families, which I think all of us should, contribute to the betterment of society. So today, I think our discussion is not just limited to the gender gap, but any type of barriers for promoting lifelong STEAM education for all, and some good lessons for overcoming them. To the audience, as I think Valerie has mentioned, you may post your questions and comments online, and I shall be able to see them and to direct them to the panelists during the question and answer session. And to the panelists, I hope that you will be able to begin by sharing with us your most satisfying experience that you have empowered a person to pursue a dream and to succeed in STEAM. So let us first invite Dr. April Erickson.
Thank you. Thank you. So I believe the question is posed as something that was most satisfying in terms of helping someone to achieve their dreams. So it's been interesting over the years because I started off kind of mentoring and training students when I was a graduate student myself. I actually was one of the first during a program at my NASA facility when I was a PhD student. So not only did I win the award for presentation skills, but then I also mentored a student while I was being mentored by my mentor. And so it was very nice to come full circle with many of the students that I mentor, and for students to come up to me that were high school students that I worked with in the summer programs, and they say, because of something you said, and I'd go, what did I say? Like, what was like this soothsayer or something that I said, but it was impactful enough for them to go on and to complete degrees. In particular is one young lady who was a mechanical engineer. She had followed on in kind of my footsteps and gotten her undergrad in mechanical. And mechanical is really, although it's one of the most sought after professions in terms of mechanical, but for women, it actually is not, because it's more like a hardcore engineering, and women tend to move or flock more to the biological or bioengineering sciences. So it was really interesting to say, you know, she said, because of something you said. So that was very, very rewarding for me.
Professor Taylor?
Okay, thank you. Well, my professional practice over the last 3 decades has been working in graduate school. So I haven't been teaching undergraduates, and it was a long time since I taught high school. But the question you're asking really speaks about a relationship with the student that goes over a long period of time. And I can think about one particular lady who was working as a lecturer in a university in Mozambique. Her name is Amelia Afonso. Well, that was her name when she started the program. She came to do a master's degree, then she came back to do a doctoral degree. And when I showed that book earlier on about researchers' transformative learning, she engaged as a transformative learner, and she undertook what is called in the trade an autoethnographic inquiry, which means that she studied her own cultural situatedness. And that brought an interesting political perspective in, because Mozambique was colonized by the Portuguese for 500 years, and then it became, through a lot of political violence, a politically independent country. But the question arises for an educator, am I educating Mozambican people for their culture? What is their culture? What is their multicultural worldview? Or am I, as a science educator, inducting them into a Western modern worldview ideology? So she interrogated her own philosophy of teaching and became very attuned to indigenous knowledge systems in Southern Africa, and began to reflect on how is it possible to bring that kind of worldview and practical village-type experiences, and she was born in a village, into the science classrooms, particularly into science teacher education. Now, winding the clock forward a little bit, last year we held an international conference on transformative educational research, and she was one of the keynote speakers because her professional practice continued to develop after she'd finished her doctorate and gone back to her university. She became a very powerful agent of change and started doing collaborative research with other African scholars in this area and strengthening and introducing transformative learning theory into postgraduate research in her university and other universities across Southern Africa. And I'll end the story by telling you that a couple of weeks ago, she was appointed a Vice-Chancellor of a university.
That's great. Mr. Lau? Mr. Lau? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. Because I think speak Cantonese is much more fluent for me. So I try to speak in Cantonese. Is it okay?
I think it's okay. They have simultaneous interpretation, and I'm correct? Yeah, should be okay.
唔好意思啊，我廣東話會流利一啲。咁我嘗試下用廣東話去講啦。咁我諗其實喺學校裏面咧。I think create different platforms is very important for students because when the students come into my school, I don't know which one is gifted in STEM or in STEAM education. So we need to create different platforms for them. I want to show one example. For my school, I find that some students are very interested in oceanography. So I just create an aqua cafe inside my school. About a few years ago, one of my Form 3 students, that means level maybe 9, it's level 9 student. I just create my aquarium because it's difficult to maintain the equilibrium for the water. We have tried to breed in coral and different kind of organisms in the sea. I asked a professional to come to teach a student, but I need to pay for it. And some students, they just tell me, can I try to learn that? I just tell the guy who come to my schools, I can pay for you, but you must be the master of my student. And then 4 students of my inside my school will join, and 2 months they get the technique. I'm so happy that one of the students, today is already a Form 6 student. That means they need to go to university. But if in the Hong Kong situation, I think his academic level cannot get into DSE, even enter the university. But I'm so happy that I know that the DSE result not yet come, but in Taiwan, he already get a degree. He can get to Taiwan University for learning oceanography next year. He is one dream. He want to have an aqua cafe in Taiwan. So I'm so happy that if I don't put create any platform for him, he won't have this kind of pathway. I think STEAM is also a career planning for the student. Later, I can show you some of my student product. It's very interesting. So I think for school nowadays, we need to create different platforms for students because I think it's difficult because I think only 20% in Hong Kong can get to university. About 80%, they need to find another pathway. So STEAM or STEM is another pathway for the student. So I'm so happy that this few years, Hong Kong school have many different kind of topic about STEAM and STEM. So I think it's...
So how about Professor Ng?
Okay, thank you. I'm a professional physicist. So if I talk about how my students succeed in STEM, that's not very meaningful. Well, I do have quite a few which are doing okay. But actually, I think one thing which made me proud is that actually several of my previous students is following me, trying to go into education, the field of education. So let me give you one example. He was my student, and now he's a physicist, and he's quite successful. And he's now the president of the Young Academy of Science in Hong Kong, which was just created several weeks ago. And under his leadership, these young scientists actually are collaborating with my organization, which is an organization for teaching gift students. And they are going to give a series of lectures trying to tell our students what will happen in STEM in the next 10 years or 20 years. So this is something which I think worth mentioning. But let me tell you what I'm interested in now. Actually, what my interest now is trying to motivate some student who has absolutely no interest in STEM or STEAM, and try to motivate them to learn something about STEM or STEAM, doesn't matter, because in the future they have to know something about it. Let me give you one example, and that example is actually we have created a course, two courses a few months ago, last spring. And one course is on Big History, which is a humanity course. And the other course is on artificial intelligence, which is pure engineering course. And now we are creating a summer school, trying to bring these two groups of students together to address an issue of how AI, artificial intelligence, would affect our future. And the Big History student is going to teach the AI students the point of view of mixed Big History. And the AI student is going to tell the Big History student that they have to be more realistic, not too superficial. So this is something I'm looking very much forward towards too.
That's great. I think, from Dr. Erickson, you can hear, in a sense, a lot of this is just speaking out, right? Be there, right? So in a sense, showing a role model, an example for people, to follow. I think you have been showing us a great example. You can be a nice mom. You can also be a great scientist. And I think from both Professor Taylor and Professor Ng, they have been very eager to groom the next generation and proud of their students and of their achievements and to carry a legacy. In a sense, I think that is also very important so that, our next generation, our PhD students, they continue our passion to drive for it. It's not something that, we will be able to resolve in a few years' time. And I think, Mr. Lau, you have been trying to show some very interesting toys over there. I think the essential thing is perhaps this also relates to what Dr. Erickson has suggested earlier. Toys, right? Make it fun. So from just talking about, the ocean and so on, you can have a cafe and make people, interested in the topic. But obviously keeping the interest, keeping the fun would be quite difficult. So I will allow you some time to show us the toy, but before that, let me try to ask one of the questions from the audience, which I think is actually quite relevant, especially in Hong Kong. So here, this question is, in Hong Kong, so there is a strong emphasis on examination results, especially in maths and science subjects. So a few years ago, I led a STEAM project, and when a pupil complained that it wasn't needed, the A, for their GCSE, their parents agreed. So do you have any examples of how you would like to engage parents or to convince them of the importance of STEAM? Well, it's very interesting. Even nowadays at the university level, when we have admission talk, we have more parents sitting there than students, right? So getting parents convinced about the importance of STEAM would also be very important, isn't it? So I wonder, whether one of the speakers would like to respond to that. Perhaps Professor Taylor?
Yeah, look, I think this is the essence of the change process. You've heard the notion that the assessment tail wags the curriculum dog. Just think about that for a moment. So you can have all sorts of curriculum development and innovation, but if the assessment isn't resonant, if it isn't compatible with the curriculum, the assessment system will dominate and the curriculum will revert back to a traditional approach. One way to... There are many important stakeholders in education. Parents are one of them, particularly in the K-12 sector. I'm surprised that the university parents' kids are still still attending them, because when I went to university, we were told, leave your parents at home, you're an adult now. But obviously not the case. Anyway, in K-12, parent-teacher nights, or where students give demonstrations, like the wonderful kids who came across and got their awards today for their innovative work in the STEAM space. If parents could see their children demonstrating how they've learned in the STEAM space, they would immediately understand the value of it. It's not so much you send them a letter and explain it in 100 words. That doesn't really gel. I think if students can demonstrate the richness of their learning and how it's relevant to the world around them, which includes their parents' lifestyles, that'd be very compelling.
Okay, so obviously, those from Hong Kong will have something to comment, but I think Professor Taylor has actually been suggesting something that I think, I would like to direct this question slightly to Dr. Erickson as well, right? So in a sense, you are saying, well, we should, as parents, let our kids choose, right? Make their own decisions. But I'm also a mother of 3 children, right? So sometimes it's really a dilemma. Is it that we try to, support them like you have support, your daughter? And when, we should say, okay, make your own choices, but while you respect their choices and so on, you show them, the different pathways, and make them make their own choices, but maybe it's informed choices. So the role between the parents and, so to speak, the children, do you have anything to share with us, April?
So I want to back up a little bit to when you first started the question, because I went back to thinking about how I was in this board meeting and I had a colleague who was thinking from a monetary perspective of what their child maybe should not be taking. And I was appalled because I thought, gee, I learned so much with taking arts and humanity classes. It made me reach deep inside and go into a place where it was not necessarily my comfort zone because math and science were so much easier, but it made me search to be innovative and different. And so when I reflect to my own daughter and my nieces and nephews, because I helped them with raising them as well, there were times when I knew that I pushed because I knew it was the right thing no matter what. So there are times when I say to my daughter, kid, you're going to do it. I don't care what you say. It's the right thing to do. So like that happened this year with coding. With our program with Microsoft, we had her engaged in the programming. And at first she was saying, why do I have to do this on Saturday, Mommy? And then when she was in her second class, she was saying, I think I like coding. Mommy, it's nice. I like it. It's fun. So I think that sometimes we still have to be a little bit pushy. Sometimes we back away. You have to kind of know your own child. But there are definitely us having the foresight and having been here a little bit longer to have that foresight and look at where we're going in the future and the trends, because as I mentioned, that coding may be the hot thing to do now and everybody should know and understand how to do it. But in the future, there's going to be some other transformative technology or skill that's needed. And so I truly say to students that they should be well-rounded as well. So it's not always just one focused thing in what you like, but you take things that you're not necessarily comfortable with.
So, definitely, keeping the communication and sharing, what we've learned with our children would also be very, very important, right? So perhaps, Professor Ng, you can share with us your thoughts on this? The Hong Kong system, the Hong Kong parents, helicopter parents.
We talk with lots of Hong Kong parents. Well, we are serving the so-called gift students. So usually the parents have lots of expectations for the students, and the problem that you mentioned certainly is a routine problem that we faced. And so usually, actually we have many parent sessions trying to talk with the parents, whether they are facing difficulty in raising the child or whatever, or selecting subjects, whatever. And there are 2 messages we try to communicate with the parents. The first message is that, of course, we should let the kid choose whatever they want to do. And the other message is to tell them that actually the world is changing. It's changing very fast. So they should not just stick to the old way of their habit, what they think the world looks like. Well, actually, in these sessions, they are very positive. The parents are all very positive. But the problem is that when they are coming into their own kids, their behavior is totally different. Okay, I mean, we have a student that is very good at computer, but when we talk with his mom, his mom said that, well, okay, of course, his son should be free to choose whatever he likes, but of course, it should be either law or medicine. So I think, to me, I hope the cognitive scientists can teach us how we should deal with this kind of problem. I mean, it's really a problem of the thinking process. I don't understand.
So, Mr. Lau, you want to chip in?
I think we should let the parent know that the whole world is changed, and also let them know the student ability. For example, one of my students, he just create equipment when you boil soup and you go out without turn on the fire. You will say, Grandma, you don't turn off the fire, don't go out. You get the prize. Before that, the parent come to my school every time, complain the student. He always playing computer. Don't work hard, always. After he get the prize, and then the parent said that, ask the student, what will be your and you can create any new equipment or whatever. So I think that the parents know the changes needed. Also, every time our students create different kind of equipment, we get the parents come together and they will comment. For example, this equipment is not good, you can do something else, whatever. It's very happy, and all the parents will think that students can create different kind of equipment or whatever. So I think that the parents know that we need to change. It's very important.
So definitely parents would be a key group of stakeholders. So maybe we can also invite some parents for some of these type of occasion. So I think, you have successfully created, aroused our curiosity. So you seems to be doing something creative there. Right? So maybe you'd like to share with us some of these, and then I would like to ask a question that the audience have posed, and I think it's quite interesting.
Okay. I just bring one of the products created by my student. He's a level 7 student. 7, that means Form 1 student in Hong Kong. Every time we have, for this product, I think STEM for all, not just talk. We need to incorporate into the curriculum. We have a maker lesson for them. All the students will go to, this year, we go to an elder home, and they watch the elderly, and to see what kind of problem we can solve. And some of students go, after the visit, they come back to our school and said that, they are very save energy. They won't turn on any light after, even in the light, they don't turn on because they save money. So they just create a slipper with, when you press on it, and then when everywhere is dark, you turn on. So after they create this equipment, I asked a professional to comment on this, also the parent together, to comment on this. The professional asked, do you try that before? The student just said that, I tried to walk a few steps. The professional, after that, don't try to produce that one for the elderly. They will get hurt. They will fall down. Because you think that the graphic, the CG is not good. Also, one more point, you see many wire here. They said that if the elderly drop any water, they will get shot. So the students just think about that and they try. This product, we call that not yet success, but not a failed product. I think the process is very important. They try to modify that. Maybe it's later in the market, you can find my student product. I don't know. So I think the whole environment is very important. We just try to create a funny environment to let the student to have some creativity to solve the social issue problem. This I call maker. But also, steam is not compete. It's so ugly. They need to make it beautiful before they can put it in the market. So steam is much better, I think.
Yeah. And that's why, in a sense, I think this goes back to having diverse perspective. And people, like other than just students and also just people from technology, you need to have elderly experts, people understand how, or electric salt, to have all these different perspectives in order to improve a product, in order to make sure that STEAM will succeed. So now I have this very interesting question, very creative question as well, I think, from the audience. And this one actually is directed to Dr. Erickson. So it is quite interesting. So the question is, so what's your expectation of the ultimate outcome of exploring space? To find a new place to evacuate the people on Earth, maybe because the blue marble has become so polluted, or to explore if Earth rubbish could be exported to space, to study or to detect any space aliens, to maintain space station for powerful weapon for certain countries. How much money needed to maintain the space station yearly? No need to go for the figures, but I think, generally, right? So how many aerospace engineers in the world and how many actually needed? So these are very, creative and big issues that we have to think about. So Dr. Erickson, what's your thoughts on some of these?
So first, one of the ones that, because we had been talking about trash, I think that's a very relevant one. We do have space debris and trash. Many people don't realize that we have certain requirements, and they're fairly lax, that you look at the orbit and you're able to say that if I'm going to use this particular altitude, that it's not going to come back down to the Earth within a certain period of time, 20 years or so. And so the expectation is that these things are just going to continue to orbit around the Earth until they eventually degrade their orbit. So that would be a really great challenge for the future generation to figure out how we will retrieve some of this trash in orbit around the Earth. And it's getting fairly crowded in the typical sort of areas that we would really find optimum for us to orbit and push satellites. It's going to become more important because we're looking at very small spacecraft for the future. We are doing more and more what we call CubeSats, which are on the order of the size of that container there. That's a cube, just a little bit smaller than that, like a coffee cup size. And flying them in swarms, so that's going to cause more of a problem. But the thing is that what is nice and convenient about that is that universities have been doing this for some time. And so there is an opportunity for someone who does not have is sort of the large resources of missions like the European Space Agency or Canadian Space Agency or NASA, that you could still do great science or communication with very small satellites. But there is that problem of orbital debris. Some other aspects are whether or not we would want to leave here. Like, I really like the Earth. When I was younger, I used to think that I would travel to Mars. I was really interested, and I remember one of my first big interviews on TV, and I said to the newscaster, well, the moon's played out, I want to go to Mars. But the more that I began to really realize the difference in environment and what the Earth offers compared to the planets, at least in our solar system, there's really not much going on anywhere else but here. We've got such a beautiful landscape. We don't have to wear all kinds of equipment and worry about the concerns, or the environment is very conducive to what we're accustomed to as human beings. I'm not so sure that I want to be worrying about mass exodus from the planet that we've come to grow and love. This big blue marble is ours, and we need to take care of it. It hurts my heart so much to see the things that are happening over the course of really my generation. And constantly we're trying to eradicate or change the behaviors at home so that we are not contributing in a detrimental way to Mother Earth. So I would not say that we can just get off of the rock and find it.
But there are some reasons for us that I think that the humans in general have an inherent wish to explore. And so the proving ground would be probably the lunar environment because it's closer, and then traveling somewhere else. So I would like to see us begin to do those capabilities just because there may be something else out there. There may be some other group or entity that we should maybe be communicating with, and we need to be able to also protect our planet.
So I think, it's really that, I'm going to ask you to respond because this is an ethical issue as well, right? So I'm going, but I think, generally, what NASA and what you have been doing has been really amazing, but I mean, keeping ourselves hungry, there's something out there that we really don't understand, right? Is one of the major curiosity and drive for science to go ahead. Right. But essentially, as Professor Taylor already, kind of reacted, I think when we try to explore space and issues like that, there's also a lot of these, ethical debates, issues that are involved. So I think you have something to say, right, to round up also.
Well, you've said everything I was going to say. I think, this is a really nice topic that can be the subject of an ethical dilemma teaching story because it's full of shoulds. Should we leave Earth and go into space? The next question is, who gets selected and who gets left behind? How do you choose? So that's another interesting ethical question. Then there's the question of space junk not just going around the Earth. We have got so much space junk already on the Moon, and now we're putting stuff on Mars. So those beautiful rovers that appeal to me enormously as a physicist. I can go onto the internet and look through the eyes of the Mars rover as it travels across the surface of Mars. Phenomenal. But then I watched the movie with that actor, who gets stranded on Mars and he has to terraform within this limited space. And of course, he's there in isolation. So how do we justify introducing new bacteria and organic materials from the Earth onto another planet? Which ones should we use or should we not? Every time you have a lander going down and sitting on the Moon or Mars or the other planets, it's carrying microorganisms from the Earth. Should we be contaminating other planets? You can write a wonderful dilemma story whilst you're teaching kids about rocket science and space exploration. You bring in all that value conversation.
And I mean, for Professor in particular, like if we all agree, space is something that we don't know and we need to explore further and to understand that, right? But in a sense, like for the Hong Kong parents, same, Hong Kong, mentality. So this is not something that would yield you a job, right? Because NASA hasn't really set up a branch here yet, and we don't have a lot of jobs in aerospace. So how can we convince, or in a sense, should Hong Kong actually also invest in this type of science, in understanding the space? What do the two of you think about this? Professor Ng?
Well, I think I don't think Hong Kong should invest in this field because it's just too expensive. But otherwise, as a scientist, of course, very often science, important discoveries comes from places that we don't expect. So I think space science is something which many people, in particular, I think physicists, they're looking for something which is unexpected. For example, they're trying to say that our whole theory of the universe is incorrect or something like that, something very big. And so that, there's something that we can do. But I don't think we should invest a lot on that. That is for people who are, it's a bit crazy or something like that.
Mr. Lau?
I think Hong Kong is a special area. We have different kind of topic. For example, we can have fintech, we can have different kind of topic. Maybe sometime later, some students will have interest in this area. They can go everywhere, maybe go to NASA or go to United States, whatever. But I think Hong Kong nowadays, most important thing is for students, for secondary students. I think we can start from the social issue problem. For example, how to improve our living because so many tall buildings, greenhouse effect. Also, there's many topics we can choose other than space because I think that need to have great investment. I think maybe later, but not now.
Yeah, I think essentially is, we can work together, right? Not everyone has to do exactly the same thing, right? You can work on fintech, and there would be, NASA, working on aerospace, and the essential thing, like one of the big images that we've seen, right, from the telescope, was actually the fruits of different countries working together. So essentially, other than different people, different groups of people in the society, perhaps different countries in the world should also work together to further improve STEAM education and life for all on Earth. So I think that would round up our forum nicely, and it's time for lunch. Thanks a lot for staying behind, and thanks for joining the forum. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for such an amazing forum discussion. Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce to you our Chief Executive, Mr. Matthias Lee, to come up to our stage for our souvenir presentation. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. So can I please invite the honorable speakers to come up on stage again for the souvenir presentation. Thank you. So please, I would like to invite Dr. Erickson for the souvenir presentation, as well as Professor Taylor, and also Professor Liu, Professor Ng, and Mr. Lau. Thank you very much. Right. Right. Please, can I invite Professor Liu? Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Lau. Sorry, Professor. Thank you. And Professor Ng, please. Thank you all for coming along for the forum discussion. Thank you. Please be seated. And thank you, Mr. Lee. Let's take a photo now. Thank you very much. This is the end of our morning session of the first day of the first Ocean Park International STEAM Education Conference. It has been an eye-opening morning for all of us, and we look forward to the events after lunch. And before we head off for lunch, I have a few announcements. So please return your SI to the booth outside the Applause Pavilion when you leave, and you can borrow one after lunch. And please feel free to have lunch around in Ocean Park. We have some food kiosks as well as some restaurants, such as the Ginger Grill and the Club Panda. Alternatively, you could enjoy your lunch outside Ocean Park, but please remember to keep your lanyard and your admission tickets with you at all times, and have your hand stamped at the gates by our members of staff when you leave the park, so that you can return back to the park for the afternoon session. And there will be some poster presentations here in the Applause Pavilion, as well as outside the Applause Pavilion during 1 to 1:30. And you can vote for your favorite posters via the conference platform. And please go to your respective rooms for the parallel sessions you've signed up for in the afternoon. For room 1, it is here at the Applause Pavilion. Please arrive at 2:20 p.m. And for room 2 and 3, it will be at the Hong Kong Ocean Park Marriott Hotel. And please arrive there at 2:20 p.m. And for those who are joining the luncheon, please start making your way to the hotel after the announcements. And here are a bit of the details of how to get there. And you will have to exit Ocean Park and have your hand stamped. And then there will be signages guiding you the way to the hotel. And it will take you about 10 minutes to get there. And if you have any questions, please feel free to talk to our staff in blue uniform. Thank you very much and see you in the afternoon. Thank you.